Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how I made this DIY patio table with a terrazzo tile top and a built-in ice chest that can also be used as flower planters. This was a pretty simple build that took me a couple days, and if you're interested, I have a full blog tutorial with everything I used listed on it, and in the description below I will link all the products along with the tiles. Hit that subscribe button and let's get to the build. I started out by cutting 2x4s, and these were going to be for my legs. In my blog post tutorial, all the dimensions are listed there. So once I had my 4 pieces for each leg, I took them into the garage, and pre-assembly I decided to sand them. I started with a 180 grit followed by a 220 grit, and this just makes it way easier once everything's built and put together. So from here, I went and took wood glue and 2.5-inch screws and pre-drilled my holes, and then secured 2 of the 2x4s to the top portion, and then added a support about 2.5 inches up from the bottom so that they would be a perfect square. Once I had both of the legs assembled, I then moved them onto the ground so that I could space them out accordingly for my tabletop. I'll come back to the tabletop dimensions in a second, but basically I laid it across the 2 legs, found the center, and then used these 2 planters I had left over from my porch makeover to create the 2 ice bucket holes. I drilled a pilot hole so that I could fit my jigsaw in, and then jigsawed out the 2 openings, and you want to make sure that they're pretty snug around the planters so that with the weight of the ice and drinks it will support it. If you accidentally overcut like I did, the tile cuts can just be manipulated to make the opening smaller if needed. Once you have it dry fit and all cleaned off, then I flipped it over and set my legs so that the 2 legs would hit right at the edge of both my planter openings. And then I used pocket holes to be able to secure the rest of the supports. I put a 2x4 on either side at the edge to support the lengthwise, and then I added one across the middle in between the 2 ice bucket planters so that they would be supported as well. For 2x4s, they're 2.5-inch Craig screws, and you do need a pocket hole jig to be able to do this. Once it was all secure, it was a little wobbly on the bottom, and I wanted to make sure that it was sturdy, along with making something for my umbrella to sit on. So I flipped it over and then added a support that would also act as a footrest that connected midway between both of the legs, about 2.5 inches up off the ground. Once that was secured, the base was complete, and so I flipped it up and started painting it prior to adding the tabletop. I ended up going with Valspar exterior paint in the color Seafoam Storm, and it was the perfect blue-green to match with my green agave hex terrazzo tile. So the reason I made the table the size I did was because I laid out these tiles and it was a perfect width and length to minimize the cuts. So I laid them all out and drew a line underneath in the planter openings and then did my cuts. Most of them were just cut in half and a little off the edge, and the planter openings were the only somewhat difficult cuts I had, but I was able to make them all prior to laying them out. Tile saws are nothing to fear. If you have never used one before, be sure to check out my Tools 101 on how to use a wet saw. I break it down so that you will not be scared and feel comfortable to master this. Once I had all of my tiles cut, you can see I was able to just fill in these gaps with all of my cuts, and we were ready to set it. But as you can see, I did want to make a 1x2 border using my miter clamps so that the tabletop would have a clean edge along with my tile. So I put wood glue and pin nails in some 1x2s and then sanded them and painted them the same Seafoam Storm color and attached them to my tabletop using 2.5-inch brad nails into the plywood edge. I made sure to take a tile and have it sitting on the table so that I knew where to attach the 1x2s, and then there was one gap on a corner, so I added some Bondo because I knew I'd be painting it, and filled in this gap so that it would look really clean. And since I had the Bondo mixed, I decided to use that on all my brad nail holes. So once those were all filled, I sanded them down with the 150 grit followed by 220, and then painted it that same color. Now that the tile edge was in place, I went ahead and dry fit one more time to make sure that there was no cuts and everything was going to go smooth when I got my mortar out. So you can see there was a little bit of touch-up cuts that I needed to do on the left, but that's okay. I still had my tile saw set up, and that's why we dry fit. So once I got all of these laid out, I made those few cuts on the left-hand side, and here we are. Everything is all laid down. And instead of going out and buying grout, because I don't have any, I'm going to use the same method that I use in my trailers. I use silicone in place of grout to allow for flex. And so basically I'm just going to grout or silicone all of the seams, wipe them clean, and it'll basically be just the same as grout. It's sealing it, but I'm just trying to use up what I have, and this almond color I think will look great. So that's what we're gonna do. So the number one thing you should have is baby wipes when you do this, because the silicone gets super sticky and is difficult to clean. If you don't have any on hand, like I didn't, you can just use some soapy water and paper towels, but you'll probably go through a lot. So you want to put the smallest bead possible to fill the crevice, and then you lightly push it in and smooth away as much as you can. And then with your wet paper towel or baby wipe, you're gonna clean off all this excess. So it makes a mess, but it works just the same as grout, and it will seal and do the job as long as you make sure you get exterior grade silicone. Now let me show you the existing area. This rug I've had, and it is like moldy and falling apart. These chairs I'm gonna reuse, and the table's just too small for us. So it all went. And so I removed everything and then needed to clean up this area. The rug pretty much destroyed this portion of the deck. But once I got all the pieces of it falling apart off of the deck, I brought in this new rug I got from Lowe's. It's an Allen & Roth Stain Master. I will link it in the description below. And then moved my table base onto the middle. Brought over the top and secured it with these little L brackets from below. Gave the existing chairs a good cleaning and then brought them back in. And I decided to add an umbrella holder, and so this little succulent is the cover when we don't need it, and I put the umbrella in. It's really awesome. It has fringe and solar LED lights. And then the moment of truth, I finally loaded up the ice chest and put all of the beers and Topo Chicos in. And the cool thing about this is if you don't need it as an ice chest, you can just swap it out for planter and add some greenery out on your back deck. The umbrella made it a really awesome spot for in the evening, gave it just enough glow to make it shine so bright, and I absolutely love it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and like always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with anybody you think would love this. See you next time.